Hello, everyone. My name is Virginia. I'm founder and CEO of BetaHatch. I have a PhD in entomology, and my whole career, I've been working with insects. So in Washington, where we are based, they call me the bug lady. BetaHatch was born of this growing trend that we see in the food system, with consumers wanting more sustainable, affordable, reliable, traceable food. So I want you to think about the food that you've eaten today or over the last couple days. And if you've had chicken, fish, pork, beef, eggs, dairy, any kind of meat, raise your hand. You are among the 7 billion people on the planet who like to eat meat. And so naturally, these trends in food transfer to the trends we see in meat, which is going to have an incredible doubling of demand over the next few decades. But we don't often stop to think about what it is that our meat actually eats. And this is a really important question that we should all be thinking a little bit more about, because animal feed is this hidden $400 billion global market that is really starving for innovation. There's a lot of challenges here. The demand for meat is global, but most of these ingredients, things like fish meal, are harvested very regionally. Those ingredients are harvested very seasonally as well, once, maybe twice a year, but demand is year-round, which means a lot of spoilage and waste. Already a third of all of the crops that we grow go to feed animals, so we need to start thinking outside of the field. And finally, feed is the single largest cost of producing meat. BetaHatch has a solution to all of these problems. We grow bugs. In particular, we farm the mealworm. This is a type of beetle, and we grow the mealworm because they are a superbug. You can grow them year-round in a continuous production process to meet that continuous demand. You can farm them virtually anywhere, allowing production to be much closer to those farmers. As a dry-adapted species, we can actually grow them with less than 2% of the water for other ingredients such as soy. And as nature's biorecyclers, insects can eat all kinds of waste products. As a natural part of the diet of most birds, fish, and other animals, there's value beyond just the nutrition. Things like the prebiotic function in the gut that reduces the need for antibiotics in these systems and improves animal health. So BetaHatch grows insects, the mealworm, as a high-protein, high-fat feed ingredient to nourish aquaculture, poultry, even pet food, looking to feed animals. We also produce frass. Some of you may know this term, but for those who have not heard of frass, it's your word of the day. It's bug poop. We have a saying at BetaHatch that frass happens. And frass is an organic fertilizer that is more efficient nutrition for farmers. So you might wonder, if bugs are so great, why are they not already part of the food system? Well, it's actually really hard to grow bugs, much harder than you would think if you've ever had a fruit fly infestation on your kitchen counter. There's no existing supply chain, so there's no genetic stock, there are no suppliers for this industry. It's very expensive to grow bugs right now, in part because it's labor intensive, so we need a lot of innovation in the way that we grow these insects. Feed is food, and so we have to produce at a very high quality standard, an FDA standard of production. And we've just never grown bugs at these kinds of scales before. Thousands of tons of demand on a monthly basis. So this is where BetaHatch has been innovating. For the last few years, we've been developing the technology to cross each of these barriers to scale and cost efficiency. We have the world's first bug breeding program, growing bigger, better, more nutritious insects. We use a lot of off-the-shelf technology, but where we can't find something, we invent. So we have over a dozen different pieces of equipment that are unique to what we do. We have a big diet development program. Basically, we're bug chefs. And we've looked at over 100 different inputs, focusing on byproducts and co-products of industrial food production. And the entire suite of what we do is really centered around the bug, allowing us to produce at over 5,000 times the acre yield of soy. We're able to do this because we are a team of experts in engineering and entomology. Currently, we're 14. 6 of us have PhDs, so a lot of brains in developing the technology to really scale this new ingredient. One of the things that's unique about BetaHatch's approach is we have a hub and spoke approach to production. This is how all livestock is produced in the country right now, where you've got your breeders separate from your growers. So at the hub, the hatchery, we breed the insects. that type of operation is focused on producing eggs. At the ranch, the spoke, we grow the product, going from egg to larva, which is the product that we harvest. By separating out these two functions, we've opened up a business model very similar to how we produce poultry or swine in this country that allows us to contract with farmers to produce these insects. This is just an illustration of how this model can be deployed around the country. Our flagship facility in Kashmir, Washington, is our first hub. We are actively building this right now, and we can ship eggs to ranchers around the country. Frass can be sold through local channels or through BetaHatch, as our feed is done, so that the farmer doesn't have to do any sales or marketing. They just have to operate. And those farmers can collectively contribute to the innovation of the system by working with us on quality control and other parts of the supply chain. We're not the only ones growing bugs. There are quite a few companies that have seen the opportunities here, but we are the largest producer of mealworms in North America for feed, the second largest in the world, and we're the only one pursuing this hub and spoke approach, which allows us, because of this capital efficiency of facilities, to more rapidly scale. Our technology allows us to also improve upon the operational costs of producing insects. Although today the costs seem fairly high, our customers paying $10,000 a ton for the product, so we're already producing at a positive gross margin. At our next facility, we're going to be cutting our costs in half with some simple applications of automation and changes to our feedstock. And a lot of the technology we're developing, better, more waste-based feeds, improved genetic stock that grows faster and is more nutritious. These are things that are driving the costs of production down to allow us to compete with ingredients like fish meal. There are huge opportunities in this large market, and with just a couple dozen farms, we can see incredible growth across the next couple years. To date, we've secured over $4.5 million in federal and state contracts to develop the technology for how to produce these insects at scale. We have a large sales contract in place, and we're currently negotiating with Skredding, one of the largest aquaculture feed manufacturers in the world, for offtake agreements. Last year, we raised a Series seed round, which allowed us to build our pre-commercial facility in SeaTac, Washington. This location is about 5,000 square feet, where we can produce about a ton a month of insects. But we're looking much larger. We're currently raising Series A, and I'm proud to announce that we've got commitments on almost half of our $8 million Series A, which is led by Cavallo Ventures, the venture arm of Wilbur Ellis, and Innova Memphis, a venture fund out of Memphis that focuses on rural investments. With these funds, we're going to be building the first flagship facility in Kashmir, Washington, where we've already started some construction, and build the world's first insect production facility for mealworms as a feed ingredient. So I just want to end by reminding everyone of the importance of the work we do, because everyone in this room, everyone in the world, every day, 3 times a day, needs a farmer, and those farmers every day need BetaHatch products. Thank you.
Thank you. So you know the drill by now. Raise your hand and we will throw a large object at you quickly.
And we ask that you stand up and hold it in front of your mouth, please. Thank you.
In the middle here, I think. The gentleman in the white shirt. You can do it.
Thank you. Great presentation, by the way, and amazing product. What type of animals are eating these bugs? I understand fish and chicken, but are you going to address any of the problems that we have with cows and methane and that whole meat production?
So insects are a high-protein ingredient. So we're not looking to replace things like corn, which are high-carbohydrate ingredient. We're looking to replace things like fish meal, animal byproduct, which are common ingredients in a lot of diets. Animals like cows, which can eat very high-fiber ingredients like hay and grass, are not really the target. That's not to say that our insects can't improve the nutritional outcomes for those animals. So we're very much a B2B business. We're an ingredient manufacturer. We're happy to sell the product to any of those consumers where we see opportunities. We've identified specialty poultry, aquaculture, and pet food as the first sort of markets where we see the biggest opportunities. And since someone might ask, one day maybe humans, but it's not on the immediate horizon for us.
Hello, my name is Sierra, and recently I listened to a podcast talking about meatless meat with companies like Beyond Burger and Impossible Burger as a replacing meat with plants. And eventually they were talking about the CEO moving into things like fish and replacing those kind of products. I was wondering, with that growing trend as more people are becoming environmentally conscious with animal waste and byproducts, how do you plan to address that trend?
Yeah, so it's a super exciting trend to see more plant-based proteins coming onto the market. It's still less than 10% of the total protein consumption in the world. So it's a very small percentage of the overall sort of protein piece of the pie, and we're excited that that's growing. I think that's a big part of the solution here. But people are still going to want to eat meat, and people are still going to be producing meat. So we see what we're doing as sort of a parallel venture to increase the sustainability of the protein supply chain. One of the things that I think with the Beyond Burgers of the world is really interesting is they've done a lot of product innovation, but they haven't done any really supply chain innovation. So some of these companies, Beyond Burger is an example where 80% of the pea protein that they source comes from one farm in Canada. So that's a huge vulnerability in their supply chain that they haven't really contributed to any innovation there. There are companies rising to that occasion, which is great. What we do is very much a supply chain disruption. Because we see that as being some of the bigger challenges. The product innovation downstream is also very important, but you need to kind of have solutions working on multiple fronts to really solve these problems.
There's a gentleman in the back who had his hand up before. Do you still have a question? Okay, let's see if we can do this. Toss it. Big arm. There we go. Can you tell him it's softball?
Hi, thank you for your presentation. My name's Noah Hoffman. I'm from Oregon State University. And something I was wondering is on one of your slides, you were talking about mealworms as your first product. What sort of R&D or other applications of all of the PhDs are you looking at? Say a more high carbohydrate version to replace that corn?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's really two bugs being developed for feed right now. The mealworm is one. We're among the minority of producers. The black soldier fly is another one that people might have heard of. We actually know a lot about the black soldier fly. We've had some collaborations with producers there, and we're confident we could produce that species if we wanted to. The fun thing about what we do and about bugs is a lot of them go through this life cycle of egg to larva, pupa, adult. If you think about all lepidopterans, those are moths and butterflies, all beetles, all flies, go through this life cycle, and they have that larval life stage. And so the system we've developed to produce the ranch, where they're basically grown in trays at high density using the vertical space. The climate control systems are very similar. The way we think about manipulating and preparing the feedstocks are similar, although the ingredients might be different. So that ranching model can actually be applied to thousands of species. So we see a lot of opportunity in the future to expand, but we're focusing on the mealworm because we know it's one of the most scalable, nutritious, sort of most promising insects.
Up here, the gentleman in kind of the dark greenish bluish shirt.
Hi. So this is maybe not a logical question, but do you think there'll be an emotional objection to people eating food that's been fed by larvae? And then the second one, have you done any studies about any change in flavor or taste? Great
questions. So on the first point, there's certainly some marketing challenges when we're talking about the insects directly as food. The name like black soldier fly and mealworm, these aren't really tasty sounding words. So there's been a lot of discussion in the industry about how do we better market these products. But to be honest, the markets we're looking in animal feed, those aren't the kinds of challenges that they see. They're really interested in how efficient is the ingredient, what the cost is, what that supply looks like. If you think about it, who here likes pasture-raised poultry or eggs? Yeah, who here likes wild-caught fish? What are those animals eating? They're eating bugs. So it's a natural part of the diet, so I don't see there being a lot of barriers or resistance there. And I would say, in fact, there's much higher quality and traceability in what we do. When you look at fish meal, which is one of the main ingredients in, say, salmon diets for a lot of the farmed fish, that is an ingredient that you have no control over. So there's heavy metal risk, there's PCB and other contaminant risks. Those ingredients are very seasonal with El Nino. There's huge challenges on the actual ecological sustainability of those ingredients. And so there's a big drive and push for ingredients like insects and other alternative proteins to really take over. And then the second question was taste. We've done actually a taste trial. So we, with our insects, we raised for 2 years rainbow trout on mealworms, exclusively mealworms. That's all these fish ate their whole lives. We grew them in parallel with a formulated diet from BioOregon. This is the first day of its kind with 100% replacement with bugs. They grew comparably well, which is extremely impressive for a single ingredient test. And then after 2 years, we tasted them. This was a dinner we had back in April with a bunch of chefs in Seattle, and it was a blind taste test. And across the board, they preferred the insect product. In texture, taste, even the filletability, how easy it was to prepare. There were comments about how the bug product improves that particular dish.
Let's give Virginia another big round of applause.
Thank you.
You.